It's been a ton of fun upgrading the heck out of this Panzer Arms Benelli M4 clone, and you've all really been enjoying it as well. But it seems like whenever there's something fun involving firearms, the ATF has got to stick their slimy little fingers into it and make the whole thing a massive headache. And the headache in this case is 18 USC 922R, or just 922R for short. Now 922R makes upgrades which would have otherwise been simple and easy into a bit of a nightmare because, like all stupid gun laws, it's just plain confusing and can leave you wondering whether or not you're in compliance. So in this video, I'm going to break down my understanding of 922R as best as I can, so that way hopefully you guys have an easier time than I did of figuring out what parts you need to install on your own guns to make them compliant. After that, we're going to talk about the exact parts I installed on my own Panzer Arms M4 clone, and then I'm going to give you guys some pointers on some things to watch out for if you want to install those same parts on your own M4 clone. Because since this isn't an actual Benelli M4, it's just a clone, some of the parts are a little bit tricky to install and it may take some finagling to get them to work just right, but don't worry, we're going to talk about exactly what you'll need to do. Okay, so before we talk about what this stupid 922R thing is, don't take any of this as legal advice, all right? Because I'm obviously not a lawyer. This is all my understanding of 922R based off of the research I've done. And all the research I did was from the perspective of making my M4 clone compliant with 922R. So information that pertains to other types of firearms may not necessarily be included in this video. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to Freedom Fighter Tactical because most of the information that I researched came from their FAQ page, which was extremely helpful. All right, so be sure to check it out. There's a link down in the description. So what even is 922R anyway? Well, 922R states that it shall be unlawful for any person to assemble from imported parts. You know what, forget it. Nobody understands this nonsense, okay? Not even the swamp creature who wrote it. So in simple English, 922R says that some rifles and shotguns can't be imported to the United States because they're not suitable for sporting purposes. And you also can't assemble one of these rifles or shotguns from too many imported parts. But that makes it sound like we can't import any Panzer or Benelli M4s to the United States, but we can obviously still buy them here. So what's the deal? Because the thing with these imported guns is that they kind of have their wings clipped, if you will, because when you buy them new out of the box, they have restricted mag tubes, which limits their capacity to 5 rounds instead of the 7 that they were intended to have. And then there's the part about assembling an untainted M4 from imported parts. Okay, now this is where things get real murky with the ATF's arbitrary rules, so be sure to stick with me here. If you want to install an adjustable stock on your M4, you'll need to swap out a total of 4 other parts that are American made. If you want to increase ammo capacity either with a full-length 7-round tube or with a extension like I've got here, you'll need to install a total of 3 other parts that are American made. Finally, if you want to do both your stock and your mag tube, you'll need to install a total of 4 other parts that are American made. Easy enough? Makes sense? Okay, good. But wait, there's a catch. You see, the ATF doesn't want us swapping out whatever we want to on our M4s. No. Us peasants are much too dumb for that in the ATF's eyes. So they've given us a list of approved parts that we can swap out on our guns to bring them into compliance. Those parts are receiver, bolt, bolt carrier, gas piston, trigger housing, trigger, disconnector, buttstock with integrated pistol grip, handguard, magazine body, aka mag tube. The ATF isn't very good with their terminology now, are they? And the magazine follower. Again, I highly recommend checking out Freedom Fighter Tactical's FAQ page on this because it goes into way greater detail than what we've got time for here in this video. But in a nutshell, you'll have to pick 3 or 4 non-imported parts to swap out, depending on if you're doing your adjustable stock, your mag tube, or both, and then you'll have to pick those non-imported parts from the ATF's approved list. Okay, so that's my understanding of 922R and how it applies to us if we want to restore our M4s to their full glory. Now, if I missed anything at all or got something wrong here, please let us all know down in the comment section below, so that way we can all learn something. Okay, so with all that legal stuff, no, wait. Actually, all that illegal stuff, because 922R, like all gun laws, is a violation of the Second Amendment. With all that illegal stuff out of the way, let's talk about the work I did to my own M4 to make it 922R compliant. Now, since my gun and the mods I've done to it are obviously very public here on YouTube, I kind of had to make it 922R compliant. It's a bit cryptic, I know. We'll get back to that later. Since I've installed both an adjustable stock and a magazine tube extension on my gun, that meant that I had to swap out a total of 4 other parts on this gun that were not imported. Now keep in mind, I unfortunately can't actually show you how to install these parts here on YouTube because of their usual anti-gun nonsense. Now I am going to try to show you the trigger group later on so you can kind of see what I'm talking about, but I may have to edit that stuff out later depending on how YouTube reacts to it. The first part I swapped out was the magazine follower, and the one I got is the M4 magazine follower from NDZ Performance, and I did this modification because it's obviously super easy and pretty cheap to install. All you gotta do is pull your mag tube spring out, throw your new follower on there, and you're good to go. Next is the handguard, and as you guys have seen in other M4 clone videos here on the channel, this is the M4 M-Lock handguard from Midwest Industries. Now, this is a very easy compliance part that you can install, and also one that you get the most out of. On top of helping to make the gun compliant, you obviously get the benefit of having an M-Lock rail system on your M4, and that way you can throw lights, grips, sling mounts, whatever you want on your M4. It also just makes the gun look way cooler aesthetically and gives it a much more tactical vibe, so swapping out your handguard is really just a win-win. The next 2 parts were definitely the trickiest to install, and I wasn't even sure if they were even gonna work on my gun because these parts are obviously made for the name brand M4 and they're not guaranteed to work on a M4 clone. So I decided to roll the dice and take a chance to see if they would work. I went with the ANS Enhanced Trigger Guard, trigger housing, whatever you want to call it. And this was a bit of a gamble because again, I wasn't even sure if this part would even physically fit into the receiver because this part is meant for the actual Benelli M4, obviously, and I'm trying to put it on a clone, so it's not guaranteed to work. I also had no way of knowing for sure if all the internal parts like your trigger, your disconnector, your safety mechanism, all that good stuff, I had no way of knowing if these parts would even be happy in their new home. Then I figured if I was gonna be taking the entire trigger group apart anyway to swap the internals over to the new housing, it'd be easy enough just to swap in a USA made hammer for my 4th and final compliance part. So I got myself a hammer from shootingsite.com and then started the process of Frankensteining my M4 clone's trigger group with a bunch of USA made Benelli parts. First thing I did was I pulled the old trigger group out and then I did a dry fit with the new one just to make sure it would actually fit into the receiver, and fortunately it fit like butter. Then it was time to move all of my internals over to the new trigger housing. Now there's a great tutorial from EKB here on YouTube on how to disassemble and reassemble your M4's trigger group. Now hopefully YouTube doesn't nuke his video like they did my Ruger AR-556 video, because I would have been totally lost without his tutorial. So be sure to check it out. I'll leave a link down in the description. So then I transferred all the internals over to the new housing and swapped in the USA made compliant hammer, and everything actually went surprisingly smoothly. Until I got to the safety mechanism, that is. The diameter of the original retaining pin was actually too small for the new housing. On the new housing, the mounting holes were bigger in diameter for whatever reason. So for a minute there, I thought I was screwed. But then I got to thinking, that retaining pin isn't under hardly any stress or anything. It's just holding the safety spring in place. So I decided to redneck it. What I did was I took a roofing nail and I cut it down to length, and then I filed the diameter down so that it would fit nice and tight in its mount on the housing, and it actually worked. So with the safety making things safe again, I popped the trigger group back into the receiver and began testing the gun to make sure all these internal parts were actually gonna work. And they worked pretty well at first, except for the bolt was not locking back after the last round. But after a quick break-in period, about 25 rounds of buckshot, the bolt did begin to lock back consistently. So it just needed a quick break-in, and now the gun is running just fine. And with that, my M4 clone was now 922R compliant. Yay, lucky me. Like I mentioned earlier, 922R is yet another arbitrary and highly illegal gun law that makes the simplest upgrades a huge pain in the neck, because now you got to worry about whether or not you're in compliance or not. And as I was making my own M4 clone compliant, the thought crossed my mind, how the heck does the stupid ATF think they can even enforce something like this? Now in my case, it's easy enough to see how they can enforce it because my gun is highly visible here on the internet. But if you keep your guns and what you do to them to yourself, how is the ATF gonna know if you installed an adjustable stock, a magazine tube extension, but you didn't install 4 compliance parts? Now, I'm not saying that you should do that, okay? All right, I never advocate that you break laws here on this channel. So ATF, if you're listening to this, for the record, I'm telling my viewers that if they install an adjustable stock and a magazine tube extension, they also need to install 4 compliance parts to ensure that they are fully compliant with federal gun law, okay? That's for the record. But at the same time, I'm just a stupid old country boy from the middle of flyover country here in Missouri, so I'm just asking stupid questions here. If somebody does the stock and the magazine tube extension, but not the 4 compliance parts, how the heck the ATF gonna know about it? And how the heck they gonna enforce it? Food for thought. All right, guys, I hope that helped any of you who are wondering about 922R and which parts you can install on your own guns to make them compliant. If I missed anything important, or if you have any questions about what I did to my gun to make it compliant, be sure to leave me a comment down below. And yeah, until next time, show me them firearms, especially if it is a 922R compliant Panzer Arms Benelli M4 clone.